Hey everybody, Tekken101 here. So some pretty big Yu-Gi-Oh! News was dropped yesterday. We found out that there will in fact be a 6th season of Yu-Gi-Oh! Introducing a new protagonist. Now, the information about the series is very limited so far. We don't even know what the name of it's going to be. We don't know what the general premise is going to be outside of the setting, and we don't know what main deck the character will use. But we did get a character design for the new main character. Here it is, Yusaku Fujiki. And I gotta tell you right now, I am digging this character design. I really am. The hair, of course, is a staple with, you know, most Yu-Gi-Oh! Protagonists. In fact, I woke up this morning and I looked at my hair and I was like, yeah, that's, probably should talk about this new protagonist. It was a calling, right? His hair is very similar. It looks like, with, like, Yuma crossing with Yusei, you know, with, like, the giant points in the back and then, like, that big sweepy thing in the front. I don't know. I think the most ridiculous hairstyle so far was Yuma, and then they scaled that back a little bit with Yuya, but now we have Yusaku, who is just, you know, whatever. But I'm really liking the suit design, you know, as someone that likes to wear suits in their videos. I'm very much of a fan of that. It also kind of threw me for a loop when I looked at his character design, because I thought he looked much older than the standard Yu-Gi-Oh! Protagonist a little bit there. I guess it's just the suit makes everybody look a little bit more mature. But no, he's still a teenager. We also got a very brief overview of his personality and the general setup for the series, but that's really all we know, so I'm just going to go ahead and read that right now for you. Yusaku is described as a boy who doesn't like standing out. Okay, so already, you know, especially playing off of Yuya, you know, this is already kind of a different sort of character. Like, it's not like we've never seen this before in the series. Like Yugi was referred to as King of Games, but it wasn't like Yugi was going around constantly soaking up all the glamour and glory. Judai was, okay, yeah, he was sort of like into that. Yusei, not so much. Yuma, yeah. So, I will say that it's, the much more, but you know what those things have in common, though? I will say that most people refer to Yugi and Yusei are probably the fan favorites of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Protagonists. You know, I personally love Judai or Jaden or however you want to say it. Didn't really care much for Yuma, don't really care much for Yuya. I would say, though, if you're going to make like a popularity poll, I'd say most people would either select Yugi or Yusei as their favorite Yu-Gi-Oh! Protagonist, you know, and they had a much more serious demeanor. Anyway, it goes on to say, and he particularly doesn't stand out at school. However, he gets drawn into encounters with people as he tries out dueling for once. Okay, now, it's important to mention that that last line of dialogue there, he gets thrown into encounters with dueling. That implies, number one, the main character was not an established duelist before the series began. And that is something new, because every single Yu-Gi-Oh! Protagonist at the start of the story at least had, you know, had a deck established already, was already into playing the game, they were already duelists. This is implying that Yusaku was not a duelist beforehand. And also, it goes on to kind of expand with the tagline of the story. The tagline is essentially trying out things for the first time. You know, go forward, take a step forward and try it, is essentially the tagline of this Yu-Gi-Oh! Season 6. So, it's pretty neat that we're going to maybe see Yusaku being introduced into dueling in the first few episodes and having him have to establish a deck himself and, I don't know, learning how to play the game along the way, or he's probably gonna, you know, chances are more than excellent he's gonna be like a natural talent at it, like a natural genius or something along the lines, because we have to bridge the knowledge gap there. You know, I don't think it'll be very interesting for the first few episodes of, you know, the Yu-Gi-Oh! Season 6 to be like, he's like, alright, so, okay, so the trap cards are the pink ones, right? I mean, there's probably gonna be something like a knowledge curve here. But still, it's rather interesting to know that the main character is not already an established duelist, or possibly doesn't even have an interest in the game, because the whole, you know, theme of the series is try out something new, step forward and just jump right in, just go in and try it. So, yeah, he might have an aversion to the game, and I can sort of identify with that. Sometimes I don't really like trying out new things, and he jumps into it and he just ends up falling in love with the game or something like that. Something else that we know about the series is that the general premise is going to be VR. It's going to be taking place mostly in a virtual reality type world. Now, of course, this is not something that is new to Yu-Gi-Oh! This harkens all the way back to the original season with the Noah filler arc, you know, that took place in the virtual world. And then, of course, there was, you know, you have the D-Gazers in Zexal, you know, that sort of thing. Of course, that's an element that's always existed in Yu-Gi-Oh! You know, I'm not against that idea if it's done right. And there's a few things you have to be careful about to make sure that it gets done right. Number one, don't turn this into Pokemon. All right? That's one of the biggest issues I had with Capsule Monsters. And yes, I watched Capsule Monsters, and I have a therapist. I see him every Wednesday and Sunday. In fact, I gotta go meet him later today. But the biggest problem I had with Capsule Monsters is you were throwing Yu-Gi-Oh! Into basically the world of Pokemon, where you're just walking around and you're just like, oh, look, it's a Pokemon. I mean, it's a Yu-Gi-Oh! Card walking around. And they captured, it was essentially, that's what it was. That's a cheap ripoff of Pokemon. That's what Capsule Monsters was. So I'm hoping they don't go into the virtual world, and I'm sure there's going to be monsters from the Yu-Gi-Oh! Game wandering around the virtual world, but there's stuff that you can do with this to make it actually different than Pokemon. Instead of going around, like, encountering other monsters, and he's like, oh, you're going to be my best friend, Karibo. You can use this as an amazing storytelling device. Take a monster from the Yu-Gi-Oh! Series. Take, like, I don't know, fucking Black Luster Soldier, and put him in a giant castle and have a story arc revolving around him or some shit. And then the story arc ends with Yusaku dueling, like, Black Luster Soldier, and then he hulks out into his fucking super soldier form, and there's, like, some, like, you could do shit like that. Do shit like that, alright? Don't have it be, like, a ripoff of Pokemon. Also, I will say that there's a lot of other VR anime out there. We're not even talking about Pokemon, of course. Well, Pokemon's not VR, but you know what I mean. Monsters walking around you, and, you know, that would be very similar. But there's also shit like Sword Art Online, the game No Life, whatever. Anyway, a lot of virtual reality anime out there. I like the premise of, like, Sword Art Online. I like the layout of it. The main character was shit. That's why I didn't like that story. But there's some very clever ideas here. You can make this work. Don't look at the pitfalls of other VR anime and try to avoid that. And don't make it a ripoff of Pokemon with, like, you know, Yu-Gi-Oh! Monsters walking around, and you're, like, gonna, you know, make it like you're gonna become pals with them, and I wouldn't like that. I wouldn't enjoy that. Also, at some point, there's also supposed to be hoverboards. Whatever. Okay, fine. That's different. I don't know if they're going to be the lame hoverboards that we have now, or like the Back to the Future Part 2 kind of hoverboards. Either way, I don't care. Whatever. We'll see how they incorporate that. Is this going to be card games on hoverboards? I don't know. But we'll wait and we'll give it a shot. Right, so now we get to the million-dollar question. Now, last thing I want to discuss is, what kind of deck is the main character, Yusaku Fujiki, going to use in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Series 6? And I want you to comment below on what you think he's going to use. For me, I thought about this long and hard, and by that I mean like 5 seconds, because there's always been a type of Yu-Gi-Oh! Card, a monster type anyway, that I feel has been very underappreciated in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime, by the main cast anyway, and I hope that gets incorporated a little bit more. So let's go through all the different Yu-Gi-Oh! Series really quick. So the original Yu-Gi-Oh! Series, Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters, what kind of deck did Yugi use? Well, Yugi mostly used spellcasters, you know, normals, and effect monsters, you know, a little bit of fusions in there. You know, the game was very simplistic back then when it was getting started, so that, of course, would make sense. He didn't have anything too complex. Then we get to Jaden, or Judai, or whatever, who used mostly fusions, incorporating something that did exist in the original game, but kind of was brought into its own thing, like all the different shit you can do with fusions in GX. That was brought in there. Then, of course, we have Yusei, who was the introduction of Synchros. This was the first time a whole new type of card was introduced just for the sake of, you know, the anime, and it was like a whole new thing, and that started the trend, whereas every new Yu-Gi-Oh! Series we get introduces a new card type, you know, so that we had that. And then, of course, we had Yuma using XZs, and then, of course, we had Yuya using pendulums, which I don't have any on me right now, just because I don't have that many, and I'm not going to dig around for pendulums. They're not really worth it. So, now we get to this, and would there be a new card archetype, you know, going by this trend? You know, honestly, I would say there would be. I kind of hope there wouldn't, you know, just for the same reasons as before. You know, the game changes a lot, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it wouldn't also be a bad thing just to kind of maybe stay where we are for right now, you know, just wait a little bit longer until we introduce the new thing, particularly also because, you know, XZs and Synchros were fine because that didn't really change the overall layout of the board. Pendulums did. So I feel like it would be the smart move to hold off on introducing something new, considering Pendulums already kind of changed the format of the game a little bit. But I would love a protagonist to utilize ritual monsters. I mean, and you might be thinking, you know, like back in the day there were more difficult to summon, but you know, you got a shit ton of different ways now to incorporate this into a different way. You know, you can introduce a new concept on making ritual monsters easier to summon or whatever. There already are some spell cards like advanced ritual art and shit like that. So go ahead, make Yusaku a ritual duelist. You know, make that his shit. Make that his thing. He already kind of looks like he is. I'm just saying, he has a little bit of blue on him. He has a little bit of too much blue. His suit's a little blue. His hair's blue. I'm just saying, just make it work. Make it happen. I'd be very happy with that. But yeah, that's pretty much all I have for you guys. Not really much more. I will be making updates with this as long as the update is, you know, whenever they come out with new news on the Yu-Gi-Oh! Series that is actually, like, you know, something substantial that I can talk about. I will be discussing this. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Leave your comments below on what you will be expecting for the new Yu-Gi-Oh! Series from the new Yu-Gi-Oh! Protagonist, this new virtual world that's going to take place in, what the general plot's going to be, and of course, what type of deck Yusaku Fujiki is going to utilize. Thank you guys for watching. This will be Tekken 101 signing out.